Hi vintage bakers! Today I'm in the kitchen making a Tres Leches Cake. This dessert is so rich and decadent, a true melt-in-your-mouth cake. A sweet light sponge cake that's super moist. I mean, it's called Tres Leches. The reason for the moisture is in the title. A super light sponge cake soaked in a decadent mixture of sweet milks, topped with a light and fluffy whipped cream. It's pure cake bliss. So let's get into the kitchen. This is how I make a Tres Leches cake. To start this recipe, I'm going to make the light and airy sponge cake. To make the cake soft and light, I need to incorporate as much air as possible, so I'm going to start by sifting my dry ingredients. This might seem like a step that you can skip over and it won't make much of a difference, but I promise you sifting the dry ingredients will make a lighter cake. I'm going to sift my dry ingredients 5 times. This might seem like a little bit of overkill, but just do it anyway. I've made this cake without sifting the ingredients first, and trust me, you can tell the difference. And if you have any kids in your house, they love to help make it look like it's snowing flour. For the dry ingredients, I'm sifting together 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and 1½ tablespoons of baking powder. Set the dry ingredients aside. Next up, I'm going to separate 6 eggs. It's important not to get any of the egg yolk into the egg whites while you're separating the eggs. You can either crack them and pass the yolk back and forth in the shell, letting the white fall into the bowl, or just crack it into your hand and let the white slip through your fingers. A little messy, but effective. Now I'm going to take my bowl of egg whites and beat them until they hold a stiff peak. If any of the egg yolk or any fat's in the bowl, the egg whites will not whip into that lovely fluffy egg white cloud that we need to make this cake. Now that my egg whites are holding a stiff peak, I'm going to set them aside and move on to the egg yolks. I'm going to beat the egg yolks along with 1 1/4 cups of sugar and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now it doesn't matter if any of the egg whites get into the egg yolk mixture, which is why I'm reusing the same bowl. Once this mixture is light and creamy, I'm going to mix in half of my dry ingredients. Once incorporated and with the mixer still going, add in 1/4 cup of milk. Once combined, add in the rest of the dry mixture and then the last 1/4 cup of milk. Mix until everything is smooth and incorporated. You'll need to stop and scrape down the sides and bottom of the bowl as you go to make sure everything is getting mixed in evenly. And now finally, I'm going to add in the fluffy egg whites. Place the foamy whites into the bowl with the rest of the batter and very gently fold them in. I want to preserve as many of the foamy bubbles as possible to make my cake light and airy. To fold in egg whites, I'm just going to use a spatula to scoop batter from the bottom of the bowl onto the top of the whites. I'm going to continue to do this, turning all the way around the circumference of the bowl a few times. This will gently incorporate the two together. You don't want it to be a completely smooth, uniform mixture. A few little puffs of white dotted throughout the batter is fine. Now you can gently transfer the mixture to a greased rectangular casserole dish or cake pan and bake in a preheated 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius oven for 40 to 45 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted into the middle comes out clean and the top is lightly golden. Now I'm going to allow my cake to cool before moving on to the next step. For the next part of this recipe, it's going to look like I'm ruining the cake, but I promise it will all come out in the end. Using a skewer, I'm going to punch holes all over the cake. This isn't just a few holes punched into the top of the cake. I'm punching hundreds of holes into the cake. This is going to help the cake absorb all the delicious liquid that makes this cake so iconic. Make sure to get all the way to the edges and corners of the cake because this will be the driest area of the sponge. Once you've gotten all your frustration out on the cake, we can make the milk mixture. In a bowl, I'm going to add 1 can of evaporated milk, 1 can of sweetened condensed milk, and 1 1/4 cups of half and half or 10% cream. Gently whisk this together to dissolve the condensed milk into the mixture. I want to pour this evenly on top of my cake, so I find pouring it into a glass measuring cup or some sort of pitcher with a spout will be the easiest way to do this. As you're pouring, you should see the cake soaking up the liquid and it disappearing into the sponge pretty much instantly. So even though this looks like a lot of liquid, it has always soaked up completely into my cakes. For the best results, I'm going to cover the milky cake and place it in the fridge overnight. The next day, I'm going to make the topping for my cake. And since this is a rich milky cake, we're going to need a rich milky topping. In a bowl, I'm going to whip 2 cups of 35% whipping cream until it's thick and light. Then add in 1/4 cup of icing sugar and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Continue to whip the mixture until you have a thick whipped cream that holds a stiff peak. Make sure to stop and scrape down the sides and bottom of the bowl a few times to make sure everything is getting whipped evenly. Now we're ready to finish the cake. Pile the whipped cream topping all over the top of the sponge. You can smooth it out or make some designs on the top, whatever you like. This cake is perfect just as it is. Or you can add some extra garnish to the top, like chopped nuts, a dusting of cinnamon, maraschino cherries, sliced fresh fruit, and chocolate. We usually just add a dusting of cinnamon, but for this cake today, I'm going to add a bright and colorful arrangement of fresh berries and a generous helping of chocolate curls. Now it looks perfectly tempting for a birthday, which is what I'm making this cake for today. The cake is ready to serve right away. You'll notice that as you cut and serve this dessert, the liquid is going to stay suspended in the sponge cake, but as you push down on the cake, you'll see how much liquid is inside. This is a truly decadent melt-in-your-mouth cake that you're going to want to make again and again. Even though this cake has a lot of steps to it, I think it's totally worth it. And it's one of those iconic cakes that you have to try at least once. Enjoy! If you're a fan of deliciously simple vintage recipes and old-fashioned skills, then you'll want to check out this next video. Thanks for stopping by.